I've been listening to Sam Harris for years, so I'm pretty well acquainted with the mindfulness trip and all it has to offer. If you're unfamiliar, mindfulness is the practice of observing your thoughts and feelings from a non judgmental perspective, seeing what arises in your brain and your body, and then watching it pass, much like the weather. And yeah, I think it's useful for people who have depression or anxiety. They can just start with the breath and then kind of notice that. And then they just have a bit more of an understanding of what's going on inside them. And then I think the idea is that eventually you start noticing the thoughts and feelings. And once you are aware of what arises and when and how, then you start to gain more control over it. And you can kind of choose your own adventure with your thoughts and feelings as opposed to being a total victim of your circumstance. That's my understanding of it. I've tried to do a bit of mindfulness practice, but it's never really taken off for me. I don't really know why. One thing that's always kind of struck me as strange with Sam Harris's assessment of kind of like the normies who don't have a mindfulness practice is he says if you're unaware of if you don't have a mindfulness practice, then you're lost in thought constantly. And for sure, on certain days, I definitely am. But on good days, I'm aware that there are thoughts popping up, and I'm kind of like riding the wave of a thought. But I don't attach myself to that thought, nor do I think it's going to last forever. And I find that, like, isn't it sometimes useful to attach yourself to a thought or a feeling? You can kind of like run with the good ones. And if you get lost in it and it's a good thought or a good feeling, isn't that fun? Like if you're having sex and it feels good, do you really want to be outside of that? Or don't you want to be kind of in it and enjoying it? Or do you want to be observing the nerves on your nether regions gaining pleasure? I want to be I want to be like Prince Charles saying to fucking Camilla, I want to be your tampon, love. My next life. I want to be in it. Anyway. But yeah, I guess that's my kind of question about it and why I would maybe perhaps liken it to the old Michael Hutchence uh, death song, autoerotic asphyxiation. Um, because like, don't eventually you got to run with some good ideas. You just maybe in like a, when baseball players are in a batting practice simulator and the balls are coming down and you're just kind of like waiting for the perfect ball. That's like all the thoughts and feelings are rising. And if you just got an insane mindfulness practice, extremely regimented, then eventually will you lose the will to hit anything because it's not the perfect thought at the perfect time or the perfect feeling. And like furthering the analogy, you can't hit home runs for balls you don't hit, but also you can't strike out if you never try and hit the ball. So I feel like in my very limited attempt to kind of incorporate mindfulness into my own life, I've found akin to stoicism almost, where you just become a bit detached from everything. And I find that you get a weird certain type of like numb pleasure from the detachment, but you don't really have any skin in the game either. You kind of like you're kind of above it all almost. You're just watching these thoughts and feelings happen to you, but you're not getting anything from them. And life passes you by. Yeah, and I guess the comparing it to autoerotic asphyxiation, perhaps if you deprive yourself of feeling anything, eventually you'll suffocate because you've got your own supply to get high on, and you just eventually get into a groove where you're observing it as opposed to actually living it, mate. Does that make any fucking sense? I don't know. Bit esoteric, this one. Let me know what you think.